There are stories that start quietly, and then there are stories that start with warning signs everywhere, but no one fully understands them until it's too late. This is the story of a young man who believed he was superior to everyone around him, a man who felt deeply wronged by the world and who slowly convinced himself that society owed him something it never promised. His name was Elliot. When this story begins, Elliot is 19 years old, living in California. From the outside, his life looks comfortable. His family is wealthy. His basic needs are met. He doesn't struggle financially, but internally, Elliot feels deeply unhappy. He becomes obsessed with one idea, that women are not interested in him, and that this is the greatest injustice of his life. He enrolls in college, believing that everything will change, that he'll finally get the attention and admiration he thinks he deserves. But when that doesn't happen, frustration turns into anger. Over the next few years, Elliot drops out of not one, but 2 different colleges, each time blaming others instead of reflecting on himself. When his parents encourage him to find a job, he refuses. He believes manual labor is beneath him. Instead, he spends most of his time online, playing video games and consuming content that reinforces his growing resentment toward women and society. Online, Elliot finds communities that don't challenge his thinking. They encourage it. He begins expressing extreme beliefs. He talks openly about how women shouldn't have the freedom to choose who they date. He convinces himself that attraction should be automatic and owed to him. Around this time, Elliot watches a movie that deeply affects him. The film shows young people living carefree lives, partying, socializing, and forming relationships. To Elliot, this becomes a fantasy version of reality. He convinces himself that the problem isn't him, it's his environment. So he sets his sights on Santa Barbara, California. Elliot tells his parents he wants to attend college in Santa Barbara. They agree, and even support him financially, covering rent and expenses. In his mind, this is where his real life will finally begin. On his first day of class, Elliot carefully plans his appearance. Designer clothes, sunglasses, a dramatic entrance. He believes people will immediately notice him. They don't. No one reacts the way he expects. And once again, he feels invisible. This pattern repeats. He becomes fixated on classmates, stalks them online, and reacts with rage when he sees they're in relationships. Each disappointment deepens his resentment. Elliot spends hours sitting in public places, waiting for women to approach him. When they don't, he interprets it as proof that society is against him. He begins recording YouTube videos, openly expressing his anger and sense of entitlement. In these videos, he frames himself as a victim, misunderstood, ignored, and robbed of the life he believes he deserves. Over time, his behavior becomes more aggressive. He lashes out at strangers. He harasses people for simply enjoying their lives. He sees happy couples not as normal people, but as personal insults. This is when his thinking becomes truly dangerous. He begins fantasizing about retaliation. Despite attempts by his family to help, therapy, counseling, support, Elliot refuses to change. He rejects advice. He dismisses empathy. He clings to the belief that he is superior. By 2014, Elliot is 22 years old. He records one final video, filled with anger, resentment, and threats. In his mind, he is no longer a victim. He sees himself as someone who has been wronged and must now respond. What happens next is tragic. Elliot carries out a violent attack that results in the deaths of 6 people and injuries to many others. Innocent lives lost because of one person's distorted beliefs. When police confront him, the situation ends with his death. This story isn't about fame. It's not about shock value. It's about warning signs, isolation, entitlement, unchecked anger, online echo chambers. Elliot's actions left families devastated and communities scarred. And they remind us why early intervention, accountability, and challenging harmful beliefs matter, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. This case is studied today not to remember the attacker, but to understand how these patterns form and how they can be stopped before it's too late. If you found this story important, consider subscribing. More real cases, more lessons, more awareness. Because understanding these stories isn't about fear, it's about prevention.